Hello there, my name is Louise and I'm a registered dietitian and a member of the VHI Health Squad. And I'm delighted to be here today to chat to you about eating well on a vegetarian diet. So I think it's worth pointing out at first that there's no such thing as a good food or a bad food. So we don't like to rule things out of the diet in terms of avoidance. What we do talk about are good diets and bad diets. And in terms of vegetarian diets, you can have a really healthy vegetarian diet and maybe a not so healthy vegetarian diet. So it's important to be aware of where you need to kind of look in terms of the nutritious foods you need to include, and maybe you need to keep an eye on one or two extra nutrients if you're taking foods out of your diet. Now, there are lots of different types of vegetarian diets as well. We tend to just think of somebody who doesn't eat red meat and poultry. They tend to be the most common foods that are omitted from a vegetarian diet. But of course, then you have people who might not eat fish, you have some people who will eat eggs and so on. So you have lacto-vegetarians, who are people who will still include milk and dairy products in their diet. Lacto-ovo-vegetarians, who will include dairy products and eggs. Then you have pescatarians, who are people who will eat fish in their diet. And then of course you become more restrictive, then you have a vegan diet where people will avoid all animal products. And then flexitarians, which is quite a newer term, and these would be people who will eat a small amount of meat from time to time. So whatever category you fit into, just be assured you can have a really healthy diet once you just are making the right choices throughout the day and over the week. So firstly, in terms of what you need to kind of include, the best thing about a vegetarian diet is very often it tends to really include lots of fruit and vegetables, which is fantastic. And we know that in Ireland we're not eating enough fruit and vegetables. We, on average, are eating between 2.5 to 3 portions of fruit and vegetables a day, whereas in fact we should be eating up to 7 a day. So we all knew about the 5 a day, and in fact in the last couple of years this has increased the guidelines, and I recommend we eat up to 7 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. So that's something to keep in mind. These foods are really cardioprotective, so they contain lots of compounds that look after our heart, can reduce your risk of heart disease, and also can reduce your risk of developing certain types of cancers. So we know that the more fruit and vegetables in your diet, the lower your risk of certain chronic diseases. So certainly keep these as the focus of your vegetarian diet and base all of your meals around fruit and vegetables. In terms of the protein content of your diet, if you're not eating meat or chicken or fish, then you are going to be relying more on dairy foods and eggs because they're really good sources of really good protein in the diet. However, if you don't include those, if you're a vegan, your friend for protein is going to be all of the pulses and the peas and beans and nuts. So they are great sources of animal protein. And again, they should be a really staple part of your diet. If you're using dried beans, they can be soaked overnight and used because there are toxins in them. It's really important that you soak them and throw away the water the next day. However, a lot of people now are relying on tinned beans for convenience, and there's a fantastic range, everything from chickpeas and kidney beans to broad beans and a whole range of black beans and black-eyed peas and so on. So it's a really good idea to have a stock of those in the cupboard and add those to your meals and base a lot of your meals around pulses and peas and beans. They're a fantastic source of protein. Also then for vegans, they might include corn or the soya proteins, which is great as well. In terms of taking dairy out of your diet, then you need to have a closer look at where you're going to get your calcium from. So if you don't include milk or cheese or yogurt from animal sources, the alternatives now are a huge number available from nut milks and soya milks and the yogurt products from those. It's a really good idea to check that they are fortified with calcium. So calcium is a really important nutrient for bone health, and we actually need calcium throughout life. It's not just when we're growing as children and teenagers. So right throughout life, we should be getting about 3 servings of calcium-rich dairy foods a day. So do replace those with calcium alternatives if you're using soya or nut milks. And that's a really good way to keep on top of your calcium intake. There are other sources of calcium as well in the diet. There are a number of vegetables that would include calcium. Some of those, however, contain oxalates, which will bind with the calcium and maybe make it a little bit less easy for your body to absorb it. So just keep that in mind as well. So calcium is really important for bone health. Then if we're talking about iron as well, which is another nutrient which is found in animal sources of iron in red meat and in eggs, if you're not including those foods in your vegetarian diet, there are lots of sources of what's called non-heme iron, or non-animal sources of iron. And again, we're back to the peas and beans and lentils. They're a great source of non-heme iron. And when we are including those foods in the diet, that vitamin C actually increases the absorption of those foods once we ingest them, once we eat those foods. So for example, having some vitamin C rich peppers, for example, with some of your bean dishes, the combination of the vitamin C is going to increase the iron absorption from the non-heme iron sources in your diet. That's worth mentioning as well. Then in terms of vitamin B12, this is another vitamin that if you are a vegan, you may need to pay a little bit of extra attention to. Vitamin B12 is found in animal products predominantly, so if you're not including those in your diet, do keep in mind that a yeast extract is a really good source of vitamin B12, so you might need to include that quite regularly to ensure that you're keeping on top of that important vitamin which is involved in the nervous system. So you may need to look at some of the soya products and yeast extracts for vitamin B12, and perhaps have a chat with your GP and see if you do need a supplement if you're not including any animal products in your diet. So generally speaking, they're the kind of key nutrients that you need to be aware of. Overall, base all of your nutrients around your dishes around fruits and vegetables. Also keep in mind, if you don't eat fish, that fish oils, the omega-3 fish oils, you might need to get alternative sources of those. And the plant sources of omega-3s would include things like walnuts, linseed, and the oils made from linseed and flaxseed. Really nutritious and really good to include in small amounts in your diet. So just to keep an eye on that as well. So overall, be adventurous. Have a really colourful diet, vary your diet. We know that the wider the range of foods in your diet, the less chance that you're going to run into any problems in terms of nutritional deficiencies. So enjoy cooking, maybe buy a cookbook and try out some new vegetarian recipes, and above all, enjoy your food.